listening to First Contact, Stories of the Call Center, a podcast brought to you by NobelBiz, your all-in-one contact center solution. Every month, our host, Christian Montes, talks to tech leaders and entrepreneurs who found their way into the contact center industry.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. As you know, we bring on leaders within the industry and we learn kind of how do they get into the space and then also, hey, get some expertise for them. So today we're joined by someone who's worked their way pretty much all the way to the top, and they're actually now one of the most influential voices in this space. Today we got Stacy, who's the co-founder and general manager of Cloud Call Center Search, a company that specializes in guiding clients to select the best call center solutions for their business. Now, Fred also does important work with Outsource Consultants, a company that helps BPOs find the best call centers to work with. Now, look, with over 25 years of experience in the industry, we're just thrilled to have him on here. Episode 4, Season 2. So Fred, welcome. Thanks so much for hopping on with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to a great conversation. As you know, with the theme of the story, we really want to know, hey, so what were you doing before you got into the industry? And all right, how did you get into this? Because we always say, hey, someone doesn't wake up and go, man, this is my dream job. They find this place and ends up being a dream job. So kind of share with the audience here, how did you get here and what were you doing at that time?
Oh, yeah. As a kid, all I wanted to do was be in contact centers. Back then, it was call centers.
Exactly.
Legitimately. Actually, I was, funny story, I was stacking physical doors onto a device that moves the doors around the factory, and I got my hand caught in between the rollers, and nothing serious damage, right? But did enough. And I quickly realized that growing up on a farm in Iowa, manual labor and I, we didn't really get along. I loved doing it, but I wouldn't want to do it for a career. So I needed a job, and I didn't want to do that. And I couldn't lift really anything with my hand at that time. So I went to a call center and got a job as an agent. From there, I got an opportunity because I was good at the sales that I was doing. And I trained some people and realized I hated public speaking when I was a kid. And I got up in front of a group and talked about something that I enjoyed. And I realized that I actually really enjoy it, which led to leadership, which led to helping companies start new call centers or recover failing ones around the country. And then about 19 years ago, I met your boss, my mentor for many years, Steve Biederman, and I've been in contact center technology ever since. I through the years have moved up the ranks, done everything possible. I've ran everything inside a software company minus development. I'm not a coder. I don't pretend to be able to write code. Anything past the complex SQL join and it just goes right over my head. So
totally understand. I feel you on that one. Get it enough to be dangerous, but definitely not going to be building anything in that world. So you started at some point going like, hey, I want to have my own business or I want to be able to run my own thing. How did that come about? Where were you in life where you said, that's the thing that's for me? And how did you come about going, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, so a lot of the software companies I worked for early on in my software career were young, right? And, with Steve, I was a part of the Touchstar story and, saw the growth of that. And it got to run Europe, Middle East, and Asia Pacific and travel the world and do business all over the place and learn so much. And it quickly became obvious that I loved the growth, the growth side of the business, right? And where else are you going to find that type of growth other than startups? Not only that, but there's also some. It affords you the ability to do the stuff you love, kind of learn. I'm one of those people that I can't ever stop learning. The second I do, I'm going to, I'll be in my grave, I think. I just love learning new things and new technologies, new ways of doing business, relationships and mentoring and leader. I mean, I love the whole thing, and there's no real other environment that I know of that you can get that.
Totally makes sense. I mean, it looks like you're the true student of the business, right? You're always the student, even when you're teaching, even when you're mentoring, and that's a great thing to have, to be able to share that with others. So let's kind of look at that from the perspective of, the cloud call center search business, right? You've described it as half the time is you're evaluating technology, the other half the time you're talking to call centers, right, and seeing what it is they want. So tell us more about that balance and understanding. So why is it important that you have to do that to make these types of important decisions?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, the world has changed since I came into it. The first, call center system I ever touched was a server that was half my body size and ran 24 agents, right? And back then it was 24 because there wasn't even a D channel and a T1. And for those geeks that are watching this, you'll understand what I'm talking about. The POTS lines, stuff like that. Anyways, I digress. So today there's, just in CCaaS alone, you look at our landscape in our market today, and there's 120 plus CCaaS vendors in North America. There's 600 plus conversational AI tools, or marketing as conversational AI tools. Let's put it that way. There's all these customers out there that, coming pre-COVID was, 80 to 90% globally still on premise. Post-COVID, I'm hearing numbers around 70, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we made in a very short period of time, we've made a dent, but it's just a dent, really. And there's all these challenges that come to, how do you run how do you run your business full time? Run your contact center, focus on your performance, your leaders, and select a technology at the same time. The problem is, we all get calls from every single vendor, and we get inundated with all this information. There's so many vendors in the marketplace. It's so noisy. Everybody is on LinkedIn now, messaging everyone. It's hard to tell for these clients, who should they even be evaluating? And therein, is where we come in. I do literally spend half my time evaluating technologies. Because I need to understand, what's today, what's viable, what's implementable today, and what's coming in the future. Because a lot of times I'll talk through the whole stack of an organization from, soup to nuts, starting at the data, CRM, system of record, through the Omnichannel into, ancillary products like WFM, WFO, voice analytics, artificial intelligence, et cetera, et cetera. So I've got to keep my finger on the pulse of the industry, the technology landscape, and where it's heading. And for me, I've got a fascinating, I think I've got a different lens that I look at the market, because I was an agent, because I ran centers, because I built training and engineering programs in software companies. I've done all this stuff, in almost every layer of the industry. I just look at these products differently. And fundamentally, in the end, my number one goal is to make sure that the clients get the right products that fit for their requirements. So that's really, where we land in the market is we're sitting in between, vendor agnostic, in between everybody. And that's not just the tech side and my side, that's outsourced consultants too.
Yeah. And so talking about outsourced consultants and making the right decision, right? So they're a BPO advisory firm. They vet call centers around the globe. But what is your role within that organization? And kind of walking through a little bit of what it is they do.
Yeah, so absolutely. One of the things, I've known Corey from the industry. He's an awesome guy. Corey Kodlars is the founder of Outsourced Consultants. He started it over 7 years ago, and he built the company around a model that's different. Most of the people in the industry that are work in that realm have, a couple of handfuls of BPOs that they partner with, good friends, people they trust, great companies. But the problem was, in outsourcing, there's never one right. There's never just one right vendor, right? There's thousands of vendors in the outsourcing market, and he built it off the idea of not just understanding what the BPOs say they do well, but what they actually do well. So we keep data points and KPI performance on all of our partners, understanding not just the we've got all the all the data points like, locations, rates, what verticals they do really well in, all that kind of stuff. But then, there's even more data on top of it. So we really understand the DNA of an outsourcer and where they focus. And then as the clients come in, we help really identify what are the right, outsourcers to partner with and evaluate and shortlist. So what I do is one of the things I recognize coming from the software side was that he had built an organization that really was scalable and I could take it to the channel. So we took outsourced consultants to the channel, started to build out the referral network, the partner relationships, all the intricacies and nuances. So essentially we were the first ones to really take a true scalable outsourcing model to the channel. And that's where I spend a lot of time also, is working with those partners and helping them understand, hey, a lot of these partners do what I do on the tech side, but they understand that, the way the partnership rolls is they come to us with an outsourcing opportunity. Clearly, we protect them, we help their client, we solve it, and then they monetize the opportunity, just like we do in the tech channel. It's an interesting model that I haven't seen replicated. I've seen other people do similar, but they're oftentimes at different scales, this truly is a global. We're today 500 plus BPOs around the world under contract that we partner with. So there isn't anything when it comes to, putting a human body in a seat to answer emails, phone calls, make outbound calls, whatever the project, there isn't anything that we can't source.
I could also imagine that there's a lot of synergy between what works well technology stack wise in all of those businesses and what doesn't, right? The people that think they can do something and they don't, either operationally or tech stack wise, and then vice versa. Those that really succeed in a certain path that want to get to that next level, sometimes they need to look at those pieces and put them in play. Otherwise, they will potentially only be in the part of the menu, I guess, that they live within. If they want to broaden their opportunity, then there's that as well. So that's really interesting to see those two really cross-pollinating one another, but then also giving the end client the ability to have more than just the internal knowledge and experience in the decision-making process, because it becomes very difficult to get really that broad of an experience when it's only internal that you're using it to make your decisions.
Right. Well, and that's kind of the beauty. That's why Corey and I coming together made so much sense is, I'm a, he knows outsourcing. He's me in outsourcing as I am to tech. Right. And the beauty is we both kind of blend well across paths. And in the end, the company, what we do between our bench of consultants that we can access, our tech, our outsourcing, our resources, there really isn't anything that we can't help a client work through. And I think to your point, the world with the cloud proliferation, the outsourcing and technology are the same conversation or becoming the same conversation, right? And I'm actually kicking around an idea of outsourcing as a service, as a kind of a model, and I'm not, it is outsourcing is a service, but right, trying to play off of the whole AAS, that all of us in tech love to grab a hold of, whether it's DaaS or CCaaS or UCaaS or whatever. But, I think the outsourcing market, especially with cloud, the average client is going to have their CRM. They're going to have their own CCaaS. All of these things are going to be cloud. They may have a desktop as a service platform with and the ability to deploy to an outsourcer all of their technology stack and take that away within a minute's notice. The buyers are becoming so much more sophisticated on the technology side that the outsourcers in the future, I don't believe, will really be supplying anything in a technology stack, and it will all be coming from the first party. And, if you look at the data security, GDPR, the California data protection, all these data laws that are coming into place, and the fact that, the customer experience data is so critical to corporations today, I think it's just silly to believe anything except that the first party organizations are going to own the stack, period. And they're going to push those out to the BPO. So I think it's one and the same, right? You can't talk customer experience without talking tech. And any decent sized company is going to outsource some of their resources. So, what tech are you going to push? Where? How is that going to impact the customer experience? It is. To me, it's becoming the same conversation, just different aspects of it, right? One's delivery, and one's actually the human resource piece of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We already see that today, that outsourcers and having a percentage that's material or a large percentage of their business where they are what we call butts and seats, right? They're not leveraging their own technology stack. They're using the technology stack of their customer. Of course, data is a huge one, security, but also just consistency, right? Reporting, visibility, onboarding, ramping down, bringing in new projects, taking away projects, and then also globally managing visibility across who you're using instead of going in between silos. You kind of now have the visibility across everyone you use. And so it makes just perfect sense that companies are going to be doing that. They're going to continue to do that. And I foresee you're right, that the end client is going to be dictating the technology. And as that technology doesn't require as many technical resources, they're more operationally friendly to manage, then you won't necessarily need as many people in that particular focus to manage those things. So let's go back to something you said when you were saying, since you've been an agent, you've started at the beginning, you've gone through all these different roles, it's giving you this different lens, right? That you look at when you see technology and its place in the world. So what is one of the biggest things that you could sit there and say, hey, look, this has influenced how I look at this stuff? What would you say that would be? What are the things that you feel that have come with you along for that ride that now gives you that sense of, I understand what that person's been through and why this is important? Anything you could share with us on that?
Yeah. So being a buyer, right? So, it's fascinating. I was just having a call this morning with a contact center team. And we were talking about the dynamics inside a center, right? And the reason why the industry hasn't converted to cloud at any significant level, and the complexities of, the operation. I mean, running a contact center, you're putting out fires all day long, and we in software think we are sometimes, and it's nothing compared to the volume inside a contact center. The leadership experience of having, there isn't. Some people joke about it being the MBA, the call center MBA program, right? Because you never get that kind of scale of leadership, KPI, performance management, coaching, mentoring that you do, when you've got a couple hundred seats, right, or 1,000 seats, and multi levels of direct and indirect reports. So learning and understanding what they're going through, the struggles of, my board is telling me that I need an AI initiative, I need help, and being able to help them define really, because again, they've got their day jobs, they've got all these fires to put out, and then now they're supposed to go to a market that has 600 plus conversational AI tools, or
be experts in it.
Yeah, exactly. And they're going to somehow magically, through a Google search and an RFP, which cracks me up, going to come down and figure out which one is the right one. And that's why we'll see the acceleration of the Gartner leaders in this industry even more so, because nobody gets fired for hiring IBM, right? And it's so complex. There's so many touch points in the modern technology. It's a big risk to take a chance on a product that's not a Gartner leader. But understanding and helping clients through those talking points of, is your executive team, is the C-suite going to sign off on this because it's not a Gartner leader? If you don't know that question as a buyer, as the one leading the RFP process, you need to ask it. You need to find out and get validation and understand what is the internal buying methodology. And a lot of these changes happen when somebody new at the VP level or the director level comes in and says, why are we still running a premise-based, whatever? And they get the authority to move ahead with something, but understanding the buying process from, themselves as the driver of the RFP and the champion, all the way through their influencers, through their, executive suite champion, all of those details of them helping them understand that process. And, that from doing it, there's no other thing that can replicate and give you that kind of empathy to understand what these customers go through when they have to make these kind of decisions.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to understand what goes into Gartner, right? For you to get into the quadrants, right? And you to participate. And there's a lot of companies that don't, right? And so some people will use it as a litmus test of, if you're not in this category, then you're not worth looking at. But because of the things that go into what Gartner looks at, there's a lot of companies that may not actually be in the Gartner, but may be a good fit for that use case, right? Because they could be someone just wants a really good predictive dialer. They just want to make a lot of outbound, and the Gartner's mostly focused on having a lot of criteria on inbound, right? And so there's some unique criteria there. So being able to go in and know all those nuances between the businesses, and then at the same time be able to say, okay, well, what's your criteria? What are you doing? And then understanding the buying process, right? You've bought stuff as the user side, so you understand their experience. And I think you mentioned something about AI at the beginning of that, right? You said, well, everyone's like talking about AI. We have this initiative. We need to go get AI. And you say, hey, look, first thing I do, if I'm Fred Stacey, I'm saying, I want to know what your objectives are before you even start talking about putting something in play, right? And so you have to sit there and go like, well, let's talk about that. So when you go into those scenarios, do you have specific questions that you ask about what they want to do and what they're trying to accomplish before they say, we want AI?
Yeah. So first of all, yes, there's all kinds of questions, and depending on, the organization, how much information I have about their current stack, where they're at in a digital transformation process, all that stuff. But the number one question I always ask is, what's the pain? I get it. Everybody can say, we need an AI initiative, and that being pushed down from the board. That's great. Are we talking RPA? Are we talking just fundamental bots? Do you actually how much do you want to invest? Do you want something that just takes care of the FAQ stuff and just passes the rest of the agents? What's the agent experience? What's the customer experience that you're looking to achieve? What's your demographics? Your clients, are they young? Are they likely to pick up digital media? Are you using those current media for, those channels? There's so much that you need to know. And there's a reason why, I think it was an analyst firm put out a report last year. I can't remember it off the top of my head which one it was, but 50% of all AI projects failed, over 50%, because of two main reasons. A lack of resources, and a misunderstanding of actually, what the outcomes were going to be. Everybody is selling AI as this amazing tool, and it's this shiny penny that everybody can't wait to pick up. But I can't tell you how many times I've talked to clients and they spent way too much money on a POC to bring out a major industry, AI engine, and tried to build it, or hire a development team and build it, when all they were really trying to accomplish was simply deflect some of the basic FAQs, because their customer experience that they were trying to achieve was really about more, personalized service, right? So, AI is a fascinating conversation. I always make a point that, 10 years ago, the journals, the Wall Street and all the journals started talking about CX being critical for a business. Yep. So that kind of made our industry start to get exciting. AI has amplified that, because now it's on the tip of every executive's tongue. And this last year, with COVID volumes impacting healthcare and some of the online and app-based companies just exploding, it's even being forced quicker to the forefront. And we're not exactly fast to adopt in our industry. I mean, so there's a lot of things, but I think Here's what I'd say: don't ever try to do an AI project alone. Find resources in the industry and read and learn. And I'm a geek, so I want to understand it all. I can't help it, but I know as buyers, they don't have the time to go into the depths. So find resources. There's a ton of people out there who are specializing in this and can really help. So
they used to call me the fixer. From the first day I started working in a contact center, I became indispensable. Emotions had the best of me. I was very focused, business driven, and careful in everything I did. I was the know-it-all guy. If there was a problem, I was the person to solve it. If there was a customer experience situation that was going out of hand, I was the one they called. Everything was working smoothly. After a while, I started my own contact center company. I had many agents working for me. Nothing could stand in my way. And then this happened. Technology. It came like a hurricane. It threw away all my future plans and desires. Social media platforms, AI, integrated software, virtual engagement, cloud management. Contact centers were getting more complex each day and things were getting out of hand. Until one day, I was searching for a solution on the internet and there it was, waiting for me, the savior, the answer, the knight in shining armor. Yes, I'm talking about NobelBiz. I met these experts enabling the intelligent contact center and it changed my life. I could say that they fixed me. Yeah, they fixed the fixer. First, they introduced me to the carrier of carriers, which gave me huge potential for my contact center. With the best quality at the lowest price, it increased my contact rates, saved me money, and gave us the opportunity to get the highest standard in customer experience. But that was not all. They introduced me to amazing productivity tools that gave me and my contact center immense strength and adaptability. And then came the cherry on top, their Omnichannel Omni Plus solution, which gave my contact center access to all communication channels in one system. It's so easy to install, and it really helped grow my business overnight. Nowadays, no one calls me the fixer anymore. I kind of miss it. Since the number of our clients has doubled, I don't really understand how I became slightly redundant. But on the other hand, I make some amazing coffee. So take your business to higher ground and start using NobelBiz. Go to NobelBiz.com and see why they're called the promise keepers of the industry. They should be called the promise fixers, but anyways.
Yeah, well, that all makes sense. And I think with any new technology that is getting to a point where people start adopting it, right? And I call it an it because people many times don't know what it is yet. They just want it, and so they go in and they want it. But have you seen, though, successful implementations of AI? And if so, do you have an example of some that people can go like, oh, that's what it would do for me if I properly did it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's quite a few healthcare organizations who have done a spectacular job at working with partners to develop, COVID related, call-ins, handling, self-servicing the stuff that needs to. But it's even gone further with some of these organizations, that it started to be able to take in patient information, capture it, set the appointment, and move the patient forward. So patient experience has been something that has been significantly improved. I've also seen, RPA. A lot of people talk AI, and they go our industry in particular goes to bots. Right. But there's this whole segment of robotic process automations that happen either at the desktop or the back office level that save significant amounts of money. You're talking about tens of millions to large organizations implementing RPA technology on the back end. Now, that is not a plug and play. It's not like there's some great vendors out there, but that takes work, expertise, the right people to come in and work through the process of evaluation, implementation, improvement, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, other examples, voice analytics. The improvements in the last 5 years in the NLP engines have been phenomenal. Some companies have really started to change the game in the way that they do licensing. When it came into the market, it was so expensive that even the biggest companies could only do 10, 20% analytics. And they were, at that point in time, the tools were really just giving you data. Which, if you got data scientists and people in your company that can take that and turn that into actionable stuff, that's awesome. But a lot of the tools are starting to build technology that actually takes that data and that information all the way down to where it's usable, down to the QA, QM, supervisors and the agent in particular, because all the data in the world is great, but if it doesn't actually create actionable insights that can improve performance, it's just data. Those are just a few things. There's plenty of examples in the market, but those are the ones that kind of pop to mind.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think you made the point of the so what, right? Everyone can have data, but if you don't have something to do with it, I call it so what. So what's the so what here? And if there isn't something, then it doesn't really matter. It's just taking up time and space and resources and probably costing you money. But ultimately, if you can do something with it and it's actionable, then can you reduce costs? Can you improve efficiencies? Can you make the customer experience or journey better? Less friction, right? But let's go back to AI real quick on one piece. You've said, hey, look, I don't believe AI is in a position to come up with its own answers to customers' questions. And quite frankly, I don't want it to. So let's focus on that second part, right? What do you mean by that part?
So, there's all kinds of, you can go out and take a look at Musk or some of the giants out there talking about the risks of AI. In the end for us, I'm a down to earth type of guy. I like to talk in at the agent level and baseline, stuff. So, what I really mean is, I don't want the AI tools coming up with how to answer clients properly. I think there's a brand, it figures out its voice. It figures out the way it wants to be presented. We spend a lot of time and effort in marketing. We spend a lot of time and effort in training, working on our culture and all those things. The last thing I want is a bot out there communicating in a method that isn't to what I expect from my brand. I think there's a balance between, so there's machine learning, artificial intelligence that's self-learning, and constantly trying to improve. And that stuff's the stuff of, the science fiction, right? And there have been instances of two AI engines starting to make their own language, and communicating to each other in a more efficient way. And, luckily the data scientists shut that stuff off, right, real quick. But in the end, what I really am trying to say is, as a brand, I like supervised learning. I think that the tool sets should absolutely learn, capture data, understand, and give insights back to people to make the right decisions for your organization and your brand. Just because an answer is a correct answer to a problem doesn't necessarily mean that it's being presented by the engine in the way that I would want it done for a brand. So, I prefer to look at either companies that have engineers and designers and people that will work with this stuff and tune and train, or they provide the supervised learning tools to be able to do it yourself in-house.
Totally makes sense. And I think some of it where you look at those touch points with your brand, that culture, that interaction, that voice that you have and instilled in the people that work for you. It's like something I say with my team that's been said many times. It's are you working with them or at them? And so at them is the more transactional stuff, the things where maybe a bot and AI and other things are what they need in that moment, and it works with them. And then there's those times where you need to be with them. And many times the with interaction is going to be with another human being, right? And they may be assisted by AI or assisted by some other thing, but it's still ultimately two human beings interacting in some way. So I know you had mentioned analytics. We talk about speech analytics as well. And we look into that and go, should everyone be doing that? Is everyone needing to adopt that? And if so, do you see it right now being at a pace where it totally makes sense for companies to leverage that on use cases? Or is it like, hey, not ready, or in the future I can see it doing this and it's going to blow your mind?
Oh, it's ready, and it has been usable and valuable to organizations when implemented properly and driven down to the agent level, right? What I would say is it for everybody? No. That's the reality. I think you give me, a 50-seat contact center that has a good quality, good supervisor team, you build your leaders. Do you really need the voice analytics tool in order to do QA, QM and monitor and do the things? You don't need it. Would it create value if you were a data-driven organization and you're wanting to capture the voice of the customer from from a discussion standpoint and really analyze that data to do other things? Absolutely, I could see the justification. But really, where it starts to become kind of a no-brainer is that 100+ seat environment. Because there's no way you can scale quality assurance, quality management. I mean, the average contact center of that size or larger is lucky if they analyze 1% of the call volume. I mean, usually it's a lot less, which is kind of scary when you think about it, because then you're training and coaching off of what may be a good or bad single instance of a conversation.
And is it representative of really what's going on?
Yeah, well, and 99% of the time it's not. I've ran a center, I've had QA teams, and they're looking for one good and one bad call. That's what they're doing, and they're purposefully looking for those things to try to identify. Now, to teach them right, they're trying to identify the right things to coach, but you're not getting the consistent behaviors. You're not understanding where are the moments. You're not getting any sentiment analysis. And you get absolutely zero visibility into the actual conversation and being able to mine that data and use. Yep. So voice analytics is absolutely viable. I recommend it for any center. Like I said, anything over 100 users. I think there's no way you can possibly scale your quality assurance team, and you're not replacing them. I think this is kind of a misnomer. Everybody wants to replace people with technology, because I get it. It's cost savings, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely don't look at it that way. You still need the human to be able to coach the agents. You still need leaders. You still need QA, QM. You need people to manage that. But at 100 seats, as you start to scale that upwards, the only way you're going to do quality assurance and quality management well and across the whole the whole week, month, quarter, year of an agent and really see them grow is through tools like that. I mean, there's no other way to do it. And the fact that the technology is now more readily available for a lot less than it used to be. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's one of the easiest ROI cases in technology that we have today.
That's awesome. And couldn't agree with you more. Now, obviously, when we talk about technology adoption, things that are becoming more readily available, we've been talking about omnichannel forever. Okay. I still think that there's a lot of people that will say it and it may not mean what they mean, and everyone has a different definition, but I think we're getting closer to that. But from your perspective, you're on the ground, you're working with the companies implementing technology, the technology. Can you talk a little bit about what you think omnichannel means today? And then also, are actually anybody implementing omnichannel? Are they really using it, or is it still siloed the way we have seen it for many, many years?
Yeah. So first of all, to me, I mean, I always go back to the customer experience to talk about omnichannel. In the end, true omnichannel is the ability to seamlessly switch customer communications, no matter the channel, without any pause or hesitation or loss in data or insights, right? So it's the ability to go from, hey, Mr. Customer, why'd you call in? I see that there's a problem. Can we switch to text? Great, we're on text. Show me a video of the back end of the router. Great, unplug this, plug it back in. Show me the front. Does it work? Great, awesome. Can I send you a text as a follow-up to share your experience? By the way, you can self-service here. I mean, it's the interaction of, from soup to nuts, any channel of communication, and it's the right channel for that particular customer and helping them navigate and solve whatever problems they have. So are we there? I'd say there are a handful that I bumped into that are there from a omni-channel delivery perspective, but they're not there holistically, in all of their stack yet. So some people made the leap, and omni-channel has been around forever. I would argue that most deployments right now are multi-channel, because there is no seamless channel switching. There's no data in a lot of instances, the data, because they're alternate tools for different channels. The data isn't being, brought back to a data warehouse and normalized and actually structured and leveraged in a way for the business. So, but there are a few. I mean, and I think we're getting better, right? I mean, especially if there's no voice interaction in the in the customer experience, and some of the tech companies today, the app companies, social media companies, you try to find a phone number to call.
Yeah, they make it quite hard.
Yeah. So, so in those environments, definitely, because they've kind of built their own customer experience journey inside that technology, and it is seamless. So I think we're getting there as an industry. We're still far from it. It's much like the premise to cloud discussion. It's the same thing in my mind. Until we solve that piece, and when I talk premise to cloud, a lot of people get confused. They think just cloud vendors. I think of cloud as, it could be a dedicated cloud deployment in your own cloud infrastructure. Yep. It could be a hybrid. It could be a true shared cloud environment. But cloud is cloud, right? We know in the tech side, it's all physical servers. It's not like it's sitting up in a cloud.
No, seriously, it's up in the clouds.
But it's somewhere else. So I think you get the point, right? We're omni-channel it's possible. It takes work. It takes reorganizing your processes, your people. It's just like everything. Any major deployment like this is all about the three pillars: people, process, and technology. And in that order. It may sound weird coming from a tech guy, but people first, process second, technology third.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you had mentioned that's really important here is that there may be technologies that can enable you to do it, but there's still the people in the process that are still siloed, right? They're still built, trained, managed, onboarded, and kept in where they feel comfortable. You only do this, you only do that, we only this. And that part is comfortable for a lot of people because they're used to it. They know how it works and they understand it. And being able to break something that's working, right, and moving it into something that may or may not work to what they think it is, many times it's scary for people and they just won't make the leap. I know COVID has been a catalyst and a disruptor, right, for a lot of people to go from maybe we'll do it to we don't have a choice, or we were going to do it, now we're doing it. So talking about COVID, right, let's talk about cloud call center search and outsource consultants from the perspective of COVID.
Yeah.
What happened once COVID hit in both your experiences with the businesses? Did it change? Was it status quo, or were you just like, hey, there's a big difference here going on?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I think everybody took those first 2 weeks in March and we're taking a deep breath going, what is going on? But pretty quickly, everybody had to make a shift. Now, because of our position in the marketplace, because, the outsourced consultants has 500 BPOs, we've got 120 technologies, we sit in between, we know the vendors, we know how to push the right buttons to get things moving, yada, yada. COVID was actually, we were busy. I mean, it got really busy. But what changed is people stopped taking the long path, right, to get to a solution. They just had to solve problems, put out fires. And we started with the fundamentals of let's all just get the agents up and running. I mean, number one, we got to get the calls, chats, and emails answered. So people made the decisions they had to make to do that. And, that's, I mean, when you're in a situation like that, you got to do what you got to do, right, to get the customer up. But everybody was really, customers, agents, everybody was just trying to do their part. So the first few months, I saw our industry really come together. And it was really cool to watch. Vendors were giving away implementation fees. Vendors were stuff that I had never seen vendors do, and they really dove in, and tried to help as many clients as possible. Clients were scrambling. People were making decisions. Duct tape and bubble gum was often the common solution. People were MacGyvering stuff just to get there, right? I mean, I heard a story of a company actually doing literal ringbacks. And for those people from the industry, a ringback is basically where the telephony system, calls a phone number, and then the person on the other end picks up that phone, and it stays connected as a leg, in the conversation.
They nail up the audio.
Yep. So to nail up the audio, they called agents' cell phones to get them up and running, which added a third leg and additional cost. A couple of fail points, because, I mean, let's be honest. I sit in my place and my cell signal is iffy. If it wasn't for Wi-Fi calling, I mean, there might be some times where I'd miss some phone calls. So you can imagine, the impact of making decisions like this, but we all had to. So I'd say towards the end of last year, I mean, pretty much the whole year until the fourth quarter, really that was the behaviors, right? We went through the cycle of first, let's get the agents up and running. Okay. Let's take a deep breath. And now let's talk about, how do we actually, next, in my mind, most of my client conversations, it was about security and compliance, and not all of them actually implemented anything. We can go back and talk about that in a little bit. And then, operational efficiencies, right? And now that we know, at a minimum, I'm hearing companies saying 60-40 and split from at home to going back into the office, depending on industry, right? Some heavy HIPAA centers are already back in
security and requirements. Yeah, if they can't meet them, then they have to go back into some form of office environment.
Yeah, they have to, because at home, you can't control the physical desk, not the desktop, the actual physical desk. And clean desk policies are a part of the physical center that, we're all used to, right? The lockers, as you walk in, you check in your cell phone, you go to your desk, there's no pen and paper, yada, yada.
Not only that, but you could have other people in the room. You don't even know if the person's logging in is your employee.
Well, and there has been cases of that, right? Where people went through training, got certified, got on the program, and then had their kids take phone calls or answer emails or answer chats, or their significant other, and they went off and they got another job, and people were doing. Yeah, I mean, there was all these nuances we had never thought about trying to solve because we never had to.
But it's definitely created now a new layer on top of the industry of how do you successfully onboard, train? How do you get people to be compliant? How do you get them to still be successful? And what's interesting is some businesses have said hybrid's the way to go.
Yeah.
The cost for a physical location, access pool of people that we didn't have before, people that are just really good in this space. And then there's the others that, hey, they need the water cooler talk. They need to be able to be in an office in a building. They need to be in a place where it's compliant and they can keep all the things secure. So with that said, where do you see it going, though, going forward? Do you see it still being that 60-40 split? Do you see the industry is just very vertical specific? Or do you think now's the new world and there's companies that are saying, forget the office, we're just going to be totally remote?
So, I mean, there'll be some that fall in all of those categories, but as a whole, I think the hybrid model is where we're going to see it. And the reason why I say that is, fundamentally, no matter what you do, you cannot generate real culture through Zoom meetings and through, you can't. Where trust is built is not within the meeting. It's when you're walking to the meeting, when you're taking lunch, when you're doing those things. And we're already seeing this. And I don't know if this is a trend that's going to continue, but attrition rates domestically in the U.S. are going up. And if you think about it, fundamentally, the agent, their persona, who they are, all the dynamics with the $15 an hour, wage increases coming, there's so many dynamics going on right now that if you're going to get real agent engagement over the long term, and you're going to get long-term employees, which every contact center should be striving for, because attrition is the quickest thing that'll kill your performance.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to do those kind of things, we have to figure out a way to create an environment where the one thing that agents have always done is built their pods in the center. And when I ran them, I could always tell, because at break times, they'd always be sitting together. They'd be talking. They'd go out after work. They do their things together. We have to figure out how to get some of that back into the model. We also need to get significantly better at coaching, enabling, our leaders, and people need to be trained in our industry. I've been harping on training since I came into this industry. And it frustrates me because we don't train our agents, but even worse, we don't train our supervisors, our leaders, the mid-level management. Every time I did a reset or a recovery on a failing contact center, I'd bring in new supervisors because, quite frankly, they're the people on the floor, the people that interact with the agents have the greatest impact to performance, period. Mm-hmm. And if you figure out how to get them to coach, mentor, motivate, work with the agents really well, you'll have a great performing center, as I said earlier. I think we're just going to have to get better all the way around. The good news is we will reduce some cost on physical premise, right? As soon as our leases are up, we'll start, getting that money back. But every bit of that money is going to have to be spent on technology, because there is no way you can run a true at-home model, or even a hybrid model, without some forms of technology to engage the agent, to do ongoing training, to provide them the solutions they need on their desktop, and to create the customer experience that you're expecting. So,
couldn't agree more.
Fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a journey, and it's going to be an exciting ride for you. So, just now that we're at the end of our slot, I want to make sure we just get in something personal. Okay, so when it comes to working at home and everything like that, what is one thing you do to disconnect from work, to not be always in work? And I know you're always like, but I always read, I always do stuff. And then separately, if you're not traveling yet, and if you are traveling, is there anything that when travel becomes a norm or becomes something where you're ready for, have you thought about where you want to go?
Well, we're all planning towards the end of the year. The events are coming back up, all that stuff. But I've got a nice trip planned, in the summertime to go up to Glacier National. And, last year I did the same thing. We went to a couple national parks and did some hiking and stuff like that. I've got no major international plans, no real quote unquote travel that I'd love to go somewhere on a sandy beach, but nothing planned. The end of the year travel for all the shows, if we have them, on site, which we're planning on having them, then I'll be doing a lot of domestic travel around to the events. Personally, what I've done, so the first 2 months of lockdown, it was awful. I'm lucky, I'm blessed. I've got a separate office, I'm separated, away. My kids are adults, so I don't have a lot of the dynamics that a lot of people had. But nonetheless, I couldn't go to the gym, and that's my escape. 6 days a week, 5 to 6 days a week, I go to the gym, and I do it always at the same time or roundabouts, and I treat it as a scheduled event. To me, it is as important as a meeting with a client or, a meeting with internal teams, to get out and do a workout, because it's the one time I can put my headphones in. I listen to audiobooks, so I'm still, doing some work, but I'm disconnecting, right? And that's what I do. To me, that's the one escape that really helps me balance the challenge of, the speed and life we have in our, So that's what I do.
That's awesome. The discipline of, like you said, it's as important as your meetings, right? You schedule it, you make it a ritual, and it becomes part of taking care of yourself so that you can help take care of others. That's awesome. So Fred, we're thrilled to have you today. It's been awesome. Obviously, we want people to find you if they want to get a hold of you. So how do they do that?
Yeah, first thing, LinkedIn. I am always on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn, Fred Stacy. You'll be able to see it's Stacey. You'll find me. If you can't find me there, you can find me at cloudcallcentersearch.com, which is a mouthful. You can also find me at outsource-consultants.com. But like I said, the easiest way is LinkedIn. Quite frankly, I spend most of my day on LinkedIn, or I've got the app up on my phone. So
understood. I feel you on that one. So if you like what you heard and you want to know more, please follow, connect with Fred. Thanks to all of our audience for listening and joining today. And we're looking forward to having you back next episode.
Thanks, Christian.